In making a film, every single shot had to evoke an emotion and feeling. He always wanted to get those signature golden hour shots in there. It was all just part of his vision and what he wanted to convey. I feel like we can all relate to the golden hour and what it makes us feel. One thing's for sure, Tony Scott was never gonna leave anything on the table.
Gentlemen, start your engine!
He wanted people to be on the end of their seat, forgetting to breathe.
Major crash here on the banking.
It's a fantastic world. I love the speed. I love the guys who do it, the drivers. Getting a movie made is constant pressure. We work months and months. Every day is a challenge. You have all kinds of issues that you don't anticipate, but it's called process. That is why you make movies. It's another piece of the mosaic of my career. How many films do you remember 30 years after they were made?
Tom Cruise is running ninth in the pit.
Tom Cruise has just made Top Gun. And when Tom Cruise was shooting The Color of Money with Paul Newman, they jumped into sports cars together. And that's where Tom Cruise met Rick Hendrick.
I met Tom about a year and a half ago, and we became friends. He's got a tremendous amount of ability and talent, and all he needs is a little seat time.
I was testing our Cup car, Paul Newman, and Tom Cruise wanted to drive the big track. He's driven a road course, but never around a big oval. So it was my job to show him how to drive the groove and talk to him a little bit about that. Then it was Tom's turn to go out. We all prayed, please don't wreck the car, because this is a real race car.
Tom Cruise had never experienced anything like that. Not in sports cars, not flying his P-51 fighter.
Flying in a jet was glorious, but in a race car, it's a battle.
I tell you, he was a pretty intense racer. He was crazy. He was fast.
And that night, they went over to dinner to Olive Garden. Jeff Bodine and Rick Hendrick started telling stories.
I'm tired of having Earnhardt wreck my car. Got stuck in reverse. He invited this female to dress up. Harry Hyde used to tell me, you got special tires. Hey, where'd you got an ice cream? His friends threw me a set of car keys.
Tom Cruise could not get enough. That's where Days of Thunder started. Tom Cruise takes all of these stories to producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. These were the powerhouse producers behind Flashdance, Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop. Tom Cruise walks into their office and said, I want to make a NASCAR movie.
Tom Cruise came to us and said, I love the speed, I love the guys who do it, the drivers. So we started researching on NASCAR. We worked months and months trying to figure out what the story was, work with different writers. The most challenging part of making a movie is always the screenplay. You got to get that right. We're very fortunate we got Robert Towne to come in and work with us. He really researched all about NASCAR and all about the drivers, went to the track.
We were at Watkins Glen in August of 1989, and it was early in the morning. We were in the television compound, and I get asked to go to the office trailer. And they said, Doc, we want you to meet Tom Cruise, and this is Robert Towne. They're going to be following you around. They're going to basically embed themselves in the culture that is NASCAR. So we started in the morning. I go to the garage area, and I'm walking around talking to Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin and Davey Allison. And they're standing back, but they're listening to the dialect and the slang.
They got a lot of that insight from the racers, from the people that were working on these cars.
We've built our life around the automobile. The characters that I've written are based on these people, and not just cars going around in circles.
And then he came to us and says, here's a story I think we should tell. And we fell in love with it.
So now, the makers of Days of Thunder, including Tom Cruise, are going to the offices in Daytona to sit down with Bill France Jr. and explain to him this is going to be a great movie, it's going to make NASCAR look awesome, and you will 100% want to participate in this.
There had been movies made about NASCAR. You kind of wonder if it's the right thing to do. That crew had to understand that they were doing this in the middle of somebody else's industry. So it wasn't easy.
Tom Cruise ultimately won Bill Jr. over.
Let me drive. I won't make a fool out of you.
Nobody's a better salesman than Tom Cruise. And then the next step is to get a great director. And since we had a wonderful experience with Tony Scott on Top Gun, he was always our first choice.
This is the Tony Scott Days of Thunder storyboards. So this is how he makes a movie right here. I don't know if very many people know that Tony had his master's in fine art, so he was an amazing artist. Tony would wake up 2.5 hours before he had to go to set. And every day he would take whatever it was that they were planning to shoot that day, and he would storyboard it. It was really extensive. And as he would shoot everything, he would cross it off so he would know himself done. You can see the script here. Tony's got the crowd. Richard Petty. Charlotte, North Carolina. This is, the beginning of the script. He was so smart and he was so organized in how he made sure that he did his best for every single person to know what he needed from them that day.
You're always trying to cover a different aspect. Each track I've tried to give its own different stamp or characteristic in terms of the way I've actually filmed it.
Days of Thunder was the beginning of my life as I know it. It was never a thought in my mind that he would end up being the love of my life, but he did. I was 24 when I auditioned for Days of Thunder, and when I found out that I got the role of Darlene, I was super excited.
I got a call saying that Tony Scott wanted me to come in and read for a role. So I went in and I read for Russ Wheeler. 2 weeks later, welcome to the team.
Most of my auditions go like, but I must have done something to convince them that I was rowdy.
I mean, how often do individuals get to be race car drivers and come out alive?
When we were working through readings with Elways and Rooker and a bunch of other people, the Robert Duvall part was being read by somebody else. And I kept saying to Robert, that part just isn't right. I don't know what those words just don't work. And then we did one reading with Robert Duvall. The words weren't changed, but it was brilliant because he's an amazing actor. Good actors are good actors.
I became involved with Days of Thunder when Tony Scott asked me to do my first real movie as a first AD. I'm Jim Scotch-DePaul. I was the first assistant director on Days of Thunder. I was 24 years old at the time, and it was completely intimidating. I mean, I got an ulcer after 4 weeks or 5 weeks, but I sorted that out.
I got a call from the production manager, Jerry Molan. He says, there's this crazy director wants you to come and shoot a race in Bristol, Tennessee in 2 weeks. Can you do it? And I said, of course I can do it.
We started shooting Days of Thunder in the fall of '89. We went with a small crew to shoot the Bristol racetrack.
At that time, Bristol was the only racetrack that had a night race. And if we were going to have it in the movie, we needed to get it shot. So they just told me, get the people in the gear together and we'll figure out what we're going to do once we get there. It was merely shooting the race from all the various angles that we could dream up.
Let's put it this way, there would be no movie Days of Thunder without Rick Hendrick. He was the glue that held it all together. He built the cars.
They wanted to put cars on the track loaded with cameras during the race. That's what they asked for.
In the interest of telling the story, you've got to place cars that function as the cars that our characters are driving within the context of reality. So we had to qualify cars driven by real drivers.
Rick Hendrick reached out to me and told me that he was gonna make a movie, Days of Thunder, and he had to qualify the cars.
They brought a movie car into Bristol and the car didn't make the race because the circuit is that competitive. And NASCAR is going ahead and make us, everything had to be absolutely legal. They wouldn't let us just put a car in the field.
At the Phoenix race, we made sure that we had cars that were able to qualify. Bobby Hamilton drove one, and I got in the other one. Rick wanted to guarantee we got one of them in the race so that we could get footage out there. Lo and behold, Both cars made the race. Bobby had a great lap and qualified 5th for the event.
Bobby Hamilton had not run a cup race, so this was incredible.
You've heard of chasing rainbows? This young man found his pot of gold here today. Hendrick was so impressed, he said, hey, we're going to take the camera out of this car and let this young man race, give him his shot at the limelight.
I got to tell you, I was a little jealous of Bobby's situation. We had cameras mounted in my car. We put a camera in the front headlight, and we put another camera behind the right rear tire in the rear tail light. Bobby didn't have cameras in his car. It was 100% legal. He had the opportunity to go out there and compete to try to race to win.
You saw these camera vehicles on the pace laps to be able to get as much raw and authentic footage as possible.
It's got to be a real thrill for Bobby Hamilton with his first race here this afternoon, and he is the leader.
He led some laps, and unfortunately for Bobby, about 2/3 of the way through the race, he lost an engine, which put him out.
That number 46 car is one of the camera cars driven by Greg Sachs.
We had cars that were really fast, but every 10 laps, I would come in and they'd take the entire camera out and put another camera in with a fresh load of film. I mean, it was crazy.
The scene on the beach became a lot bigger than what was originally planned.
The stunt guys took over, really.
We entered by the pier, started crashing. This is where we ran right into the water at like 70 miles an hour. Wave came in and caught our cars. Tony says, don't stop until they quit running. So we would get out as far as we could. We just slammed into each other. The other stunt guy hit me so hard that my head actually went through the driver's window.
The great thing about good stunt drivers, they go for the gusto.
Somebody says, you bleed a little bit out of your forehead. I never even knew. I still drive it.
That sequence did get out of hand, and we did burn through a bunch of cars.
I'm Chris Lebenzon. I was an editor on the film Days of Thunder. I got to Daytona Beach January 2nd of 1990, and the movie was going to come out June 6th, which was a really aggressive schedule. We were located in a school. We were down in the basement. There were a lot more impediments, really, to editing back then. It was very mechanical. We had to work every day and into the night to hit this June 6th date. There was a scene in the movie where Tom is racing Michael Rooker, and they're racing in the hospital in their wheelchairs.
That was by far my favorite sequence. We were going as hard as we could. I would pull him back. He would grab me and pull me back.
The scene originally was really long. They went down corridors, they went through other operating rooms.
Tom's knuckles and my knuckles were bloody messes.
The scene became very short, which was great because it told the story in a very concise way.
I won the wheelchair race. You saw I won. He thinks he won, though.
When you have to make a release date, you have to have everything ready. So while we were filming, we were editing at night. Music is a big part of it. So we flew our composer, Hans Zimmer, to Daytona.
How did I first hear about Days of Thunder? One day I get a call going, would I go down to Daytona and meet with Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer, and Tony Scott about Days of Thunder? You know, I didn't pack anything. It was only going to be a meeting, you know, for one day. And we started talking, and during the meeting, we were bubbling over with ideas and plans, and it was a really creative meeting. And so I think it was Don Simpson who said, look, if you leave now, we'll never make our deadline. You better stay here. And I'm going, but I don't have a studio, and I don't have any clothes. I just came in my t-shirt. And they said, don't worry about it. And that's really how it started. I mean, I arrived, and I was never allowed to leave again.
So we had to lock Hans down and make sure we got everything right for the score. So we had to come up with all these various melodies. It's an enormous amount of work.
For us to see a composer during filming was pretty unheard of.
Chris Lebenzon would send him, you know, a rough picture sequence that he could then work on a temporary score for.
Now we were there. Now I was there. Now I would be writing every day. In the evening, Tony, Jerry, Don would come in, would hear what I was doing. We tried to challenge each other, you know, we tried to do things which nobody had done before. We certainly started setting a tone with that movie. Tony kept saying, make it weirder, you know. Don't say that to me twice, I'll give you weird.
Shooting got extended because we wound up making some script changes throughout the middle of the process.
The script was constantly being rewritten by Robert Towne.
Everyone was standing over his shoulder saying, no, that's not what a race car driver would say. They'd say this.
Even though the script makes changes as you make the movie, because you find out things about the characters, so you start working on the script, and you get it right.
Coming in here, on action, I'm going to be take off your headset.
I remember a memo was slipped under my door, and it basically said that you should throw out the script and dispose of it.
Everything that traditionally happens in post-production on a normal film had to happen while we were filming because we were running out of time to meet the release date.
Every single day was intense.
We weren't even sure what was going on.
It was awful.
One of the great exciting aspects of doing the picture is that we would be driving actual stock cars.
You really have to keep an eye on the car, staying in the place you wanted to stay in.
They made us train for weeks. The first thing they tell you is avoid hitting each other and avoid the wall.
They brought me out to the track, and they started up one of the cars. You could feel it in the rumble in the pavement. Truth be told, it scared the living hell out of me.
Tony comes up to me, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get up to 120 miles an hour, and then I want you to grab the wheel with your knee, and then I want you to flip this camera on and clap it, then grab the wheel again, and then when you feel comfortable enough, grab the wheel with your knee again, switch the next two cameras on, clap them both, and then you go. And I said, what? I'm nervous as all hell.
Okay, roll it, and please slate, Carrie. And action!
For some miraculous reason, it all worked out. But I was terrified.
I know Cole, he always goes to the outside.
We tried everything, but it was a continual learning experience. His desire is always to get closer and more involved, to put people right in the action.
Tony was such an innovator. He was such a visionary. And every movie and everything that Tony ever did, he always wanted it to be something that was personally challenging to himself.
He constantly pushed style. He constantly pushed the camera. He constantly pushed everybody.
We had a camera car designed and built that could actually run with the race cars at 120 miles an hour. The cameras on the outside, the operators on the inside in a relatively safe position.
The car itself is it's an El Camino 86 El Camino body sitting on a Winston Cup car, modified chassis.
Tony Scott much prefers location work. He does not like the artifice of a set or trying to recreate elements that are in a fabricated environment.
I'm gonna give you an engine low to the ground.
That scene was shot inside that barn. There were so many holes in the roof. We had big cranes outside with big lights shooting down through the ceiling, and we filled the inside with smoke. We're filmmakers. We understand what good light is, and we understand when that good light is. You put yourself in the right position, knowing exactly where the sun's coming up or going down. Then it was, okay, let's turn Cruz and Duvall loose.
Hello everyone, we're at the Daytona International Speedway and 1990 racing season is underway.
I used this as a trivia question for my friends. Who's the only driver that ran in both 125 races at Daytona, qualifying for the same 500? And that would be moi. I ran the first 125, get a little footage, I ran about half the race and then just pulled in. Jumped out of that car and got in the other one and ran the second 125. You won't see that on record anywhere because that was a case where they put the cars in the race.
The NASCAR world opened their doors to us to have Hollywood just kind of descend on them as we did. The interesting part was that we were not the stars. We were actually just there filming and having our actors walking around.
He is hot! Tom Cruise is just an added attraction.
Being in Daytona, when you're making a movie about NASCAR, it doesn't really get more exciting than that.
We had a camera car going around the actual track with Tom Cruise in the car to get the crowd cheering. We had a helicopter taking off with the full stands, and we had a few hours to execute the entire thing.
You got a packed house, you got a race going on, and then he's got to be strapped down.
And then you had the camera in the helicopter that took Tom away, which was a great shot. And that was all just for like 2 or 3 or 4 seconds of film.
One of the hardest parts of the filming process was the shooting at the Daytona 500. Hundreds of thousands of people and an actual race going on.
The challenge with filming a race at a racetrack, that racetrack's 2.5 miles around. You have to put a camera everywhere you want a shot. So I have a schematic that I drew up with all the camera positions. Tony and I went around and we picked every position, and we ended up with around 22 cameras, all with anamorphic lenses. Panavision had to call in every anamorphic lens they had around the world.
This year's 500 is a little different. It's more than a race, it's a setting for a new motion picture. Now, there are 2 camera cars that will start in the back of the field.
Here's Hollywood being involved in the middle of the biggest race we're going to do. That actually makes the Daytona 500 even more special.
2 machines out here for that motion picture. They're just running 100 miles and they are not being scorched.
What amazes me is that they actually had a race car out there on the track competing.
Leader Dale Earnhardt is coming up on the movie cars, and there we go. He's in the film Days of Thunder.
So we were all trying to get in the movie too, and so we'd catch him in the race and just kind of hang out there a little bit. Maybe the camera is on this car right now, and they'll see my car.
They're going to run 100 miles and then pull up.
The original production schedule for Days of Thunder was supposed to have wrapped up shortly after Daytona Speed Weeks in 1990. They ended up staying in Daytona for 3 months.
We had spent weeks filming actual races, trying to capture wrecks. Well, unfortunately, the camera was always pointed to the left when the accident happened to the right. So we had to stage.
All you guys are supposedly in racing formation, it's 100 laps.
Tony Scott designed all these wreck scenes.
The camera car's up, hold for 2 beats, then open the hole up. Give me 2 beats, box him for 2 beats.
He had these little toy cars that he played with and showed the stuntmen and all the people involved.
We have like a mini production meeting before each setup so that each individual knows what they're doing. 1, for safety factor, and 2, that we know what we're getting out of the shot in the end.
Rick Hendrick was our kind of godfather. We pushed the limits of the cars and the drivers and wrecked them often and multiple times within a day, and their team would help us put it back together. We had to flip one of the cars, but we couldn't do that and wreck a track, so we did it on an airport runway. We had to light off a bomb in the back.
That car barrel rolled down the backstretch like no one has ever seen before. Once the car finally quit rolling, the stunt driver jumped out and he yells, "Bleep yeah!"
But there's a lot of slang terms that came out of the movie.
We got a perfectly matched set of tires on there.
Rubbing is racing.
I'm more scared of being nothing
than I am of being hurt.
You can pass on the outside.
50 laps my way and 50 laps your way.
Let me out of the car, Cole. I love that line too.
When we finally wrapped principal photography, there was doubt all around.
The shooting for Days of Thunder was quite long and extensive. We went really over budget and over schedule.
That's why, you know, it's a budget. It's an estimated budget.
The whole thing was just the craziest adventure that you could ever have. There was no sleep.
There was an incredible amount of concern of would we actually make the release date.
It was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week proposition to make the theaters in time.
And I'd go to work every day and I'd see this billboard, Cruise Like Thunder, I think it said. and it was going to come out June 6th. We didn't make that date. The date changed as we got further into post.
Literally 2 weeks before the movie was released, we realized we needed to reshoot the ending.
We had a pretty good cut of the movie, and we realized right at the end we didn't have the shot of Cole Trickle crossing the finish line in the Daytona 500.
So we packed up, we all went back east.
I remember getting on a plane after we wrapped and flying back to Daytona to shoot some pickup scenes with Tom.
We wound up filming Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in Daytona.
It's constant pressure. It's like a taxi meter. You know, the money's constantly ticking away. You gotta get the movie finished.
Friday night at Wrap, the Paramount jet was there to take the negative to the lab in Hollywood and developed Friday night. It was Saturday morning cut into the film, and Sunday night it was placed into the last reel of the film because the rest of the film had been printed and been ready to go out. So it was literally down to the wire in making the release date.
Well, folks, it's finally here. After months of anticipation, Days of Thunder premieres in stock car country.
We had NASCAR that was really growing in popularity and starting, to trend around the country. And as soon as you add this movie that was coming out, it really launched NASCAR to the next level.
The premiere of Days of Thunder, there were a lot of very nervous people sitting in that movie theater. And when they rolled through that opening sequence of the film, NASCAR's never looked cooler.
We can all kind of relate to the golden hour and what it makes us feel. So as far as Tony with his sunrise and his sunsets, it was all just part of his vision and the beauty of each frame and what he wanted to convey. Lots of great memories, lots of great stories, lots of great laughs, lots of excitement, great days. Oh, there's the gang. Tony, Don Simpson, Robert Towne, Jerry Bruckheimer, Tom Cruise, the ones that made the movie a hit. Doing Days of Thunder was the greatest blessing of my life. I was Tony's rock, and then when we had our children, Tony liked to go rock climbing. That was his passion. His passion was rock climbing. So he would work really, really hard, and then we would go and do really fun adrenaline vacations with our boys. As soon as they could walk, they were rock climbing and scuba diving. Very much a homebody, not Hollywood at all. He was really fun at home, and he made a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Well, Tony was a beautiful man.
Roll both cameras, Steve, roll them.
My first initial visual memory is of him in his red shorts with a cigar in his mouth, early in the morning. What a great guy, great man, great director. Ended up having a beautiful family. And what a shame to have lost him, when we did.
We'd become very close after the movie. And I was very sad when he passed away. Yeah.
I love Tony. I miss my friend. I miss just the way he would get everything out of you, the way he would encourage you to be as reckless and as dangerous as he was.
The most flattering interview that I've read was when Tony said that the best thing that came out of the movie for him was his family. That really made me feel great. That was good. Yeah. I'm glad he felt that way, because I do too.
There's movies that people want to share with future generations. I still relate green and black to Days of Thunder. If I see a green and black car out there, I think it's, oh, there's a Days of Thunder car.
People work 7 days a week for racing. I mean, it's their life, it's what they love.
To this day, we still watch the races. You had to like Dale Earnhardt. When he passed away, I switched my allegiance to the California driver in the number 24 car.
Jeff Gordon was supposed to have run the 46.
There is definitely truth to that it was an option that was being thought of or looked at.
The Paramount Pictures still own the rights to those things.
I thought Cole Trickle was the man in Days of Thunder, so had the car been green and yellow with City Chevrolet and 46, I would have been all in, baby.
Days of Thunder made my career.
Days of Thunder was one of the biggest films for my career.
They've gone to great lengths to make sure that they portray the sport exactly as it is.
It's a film we're talking about 30 years later, so how many films do you remember 30 years after they were made?
What's going to make it unique is the story and the characters. And if we can get the audience to fall in love with those race cars and become Tom Cruise for 2 hours, we're going to be very successful at our task.
It was really hard, very ambitious. It had all sorts of problems, but everybody stayed friends. And I think that's the true genius behind that movie.